Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm here with a Magic the Gathering Brawl deck profile. So for those who don't know, I have been playing Magic for about 10 years. Standard has been on and off, mostly off, because Standard's kind of a train wreck right now, and it's been a train wreck for quite a long time actually. But regardless, I've been playing mostly Commander, and for those who don't know, Commander/EDH or Elder Highlander Dragon is a singleton format where you run a Commander card and 99 other cards in your deck. All of them have to be one-ofs except for basic lands or cards that say you can run more than one of it. But Brawl is basically just the standard version, and while it's not as interesting as Commander because there's not as many possibilities, Brawl is still kind of interesting, and it's way better than what's currently being played in Standard because Standard's just not fun. But as far as the deck, I am playing a mono-green Jolrael deck, and the whole idea of the deck is to draw extra cards to spawn cat tokens and swarm. So the deck is just going to be doing a lot of your standard green stuff, where you're going to be playing a couple of mana dorks, you're going to be playing just some solid green creatures, and then cards that'll help you draw extra cards or fish for cards that you want to see, with a little bit of some of the more basic removal. I'm just going to go through all of the cards really quickly and kind of explain why they're in this deck. There is a couple of ways you could build the deck and change it to be what you want, but some of the core ideas are going to remain the same, and I'll highlight the key or important cards, because she is a pretty interesting and high synergy deck. So Gilded Goose is for mana, Pelt Collector's because he's basically a good green card that costs 1, Veil of Summer is a card that draws us a card and acts as protection against a blue or black, but it's there mostly to draw a card. Leafkin Druid is just another mana dork. Once Upon a Time is to help fix our opening hand if we open it up, and if it's not, then we also can use it to help fix our hand for the mid to late game. Ram Through is removal. Return to Nature is removal. Setessan Training is just another draw card. It also gives a creature trample and +1/+0, but it's there for drawing. Titanic Brawl is just more removal. Track Down is another draw card that also helps us fix the top of our deck. Feline Sovereign is for that cat synergy and also removal on artifacts and enchantments when a cat does damage to the opponent, which we do try to spawn lots of cats. And there are a couple of other cards that are cats that are very high synergy with Jolrael, so I would consider this to be one of the most important cards in the deck. Garruk's Uprising is another one of the most important cards in the deck because on entering, if we control another creature with 4 or greater power, we get a draw card, triggering Jolrael's ability to spawn us another cat, on top of which all of our creatures just inherently get trample, which combos with Feline Sovereign. And then whenever another creature with 4 or greater power enters the battlefield, we will continue to draw cards. So it's just very high synergy with the deck. Hydra's Growth is just a really solid enchantment to just kind of act as a win condition and to try to end the game. Pride Malkin is another one of those high synergy cards. The fact that it is a cat, it puts a +1/+1 counter on another creature is pretty solid, and then each creature with a +1/+1 counter has trample is just a pretty good ability. You could put the counter on this and then he just has trample. And then he just also combos with Feline Sovereign, so Pride Malkin is just a really good high synergy card. The first Iroan games is another pretty solid card. Most of the time we just care about the third effect where we draw a card, but the other 3 effects on creating a token is not bad because of Jolrael's other ability, where based on our hand we could change the base power and toughness of the cards on our field, so that's pretty interesting. On top of which, it puts 3 +1/+1 counters, which also combos with Pride Malkin, and we already see the synergy in having big creatures and trample damage. And then creating a gold is just more mana ramp for later. Thrashing Brontodon is a solid creature, on top of which he is removal for artifacts and enchantments. Iroan is just another basic green creature that's just insane. Heraldic Banner is to get our creatures power up by +1/+0, so a lot of our 3s can become 4s, which trigger a lot of our stuff. On top of which, it also ramps us a mana of our choice. Obviously, it's going to be green. Arasta, the Endless Web, is another creature spawner whenever the opponent casts a instant or sorcery, on top of which it has reach. Guardian Project, just for more card draw. This is probably required for the deck because it is a solid, consistent way of drawing more cards, and we do need ways to constantly draw cards so we could constantly spawn cat tokens. Nylea is just an indestructible creature. Getting to 5 devotion isn't necessarily hard, and then she makes all of our creature spells cost less. We're most of the time not really going to use her ability to look at the top of our deck for a creature, but if you want, it's the options there. Renata is in there for similar reasons to Nylea. She makes all of our creatures bigger as they enter the battlefield, on top of which getting to a decently high number of devotion isn't necessarily hard for her, and her power is derived by the amount of green we have on our field, so she could be pretty big, slap trample on her, and she could be a pretty good threat. Sabertooth Mauler is another cat for that cat synergy, on top of which if something died during your turn, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it and untap it, so it's just a pretty solid card. Shifting Ceratops is another pretty solid card, in which it can't be countered, and it has protection from blue in case that matters. If none of those abilities really matter, then it still has the ability to gain haste, trample, or reach for just 1 green at your choosing. Elder Gargaroth is in there just because he has a whole bunch of keywords. He's a very solid green creature, and on top of which he also says draw a card as one of his options whether we attack or block with him. And because he has Vigilance, he's both a very solid offense and defense card. God Eternal Ronus is in there because he's just another really hard to deal with creature. He has obviously more than 4 power and toughness. He has Death Touch. That doesn't necessarily matter, but it could. On top of which, when he enters, he doubles the power of all of our creatures, and they gain Vigilance until end of turn. So Vigilance Tramplers that have their power doubled is actually kind of scary. And then he's just a god, so he's really hard to remove, in which if they try, he can put himself back into the deck. Keeper of Fables is probably another key and important card that the deck must have. Because he is a cat, he has that cat synergy, and whenever 1 or more non-human creatures deal damage to the opponent, you get to draw a card, which, again, drawing cards is what the deck really wants to do to spawn more cat tokens, so that way you could keep the aggression going while still keeping a solid hand. Nissa, Who Shakes the World, is just an obvious card. She's just a very solid green card in which she doubles all of our forests. A lot of our deck's mana base is going to be forests because we're only running 1 color. It doesn't really need to be anything else. But we do have a couple of other utility lands just in case. On top of which, she will help us spawn more creatures and turn our lands into creatures, and then making all of our lands indestructible is always a good thing. Returning to the Wild Speaker is just another card to draw us cards. The buff can matter, but most of the time it's there just to draw us cards to get more cat tokens. Shared Summons is just a tutor card for creatures at instant speed. Very solid. Kongla, the Titan Ape, is probably one of the other most important cards in the deck because he not only acts as a fight, which is a removal ability, but he also can destroy artifacts and enchantments when he attacks, and the ability we look for the most is actually his last ability, where we could return a human we control to our hand and he gains indestructible. Well, that ability only costs 2, and luckily our commander only costs 2, so she's really cheap to replay off of bouncing her with Kongala's ability. And then we run the Great Henge because it's not hard to make the Great Henge cost 4 or less mana. On top of which, it produces us mana, and then the ability we care about the most is when a non-creature token enters the battlefield, it enters with a +1/+1 counter, and we draw a card. Unfortunately, it doesn't trigger off of our tokens entering, but the fact that we just want to play more creatures to draw more cards, and this card just helps facilitate it, makes it a very important card in the deck. Wildwood Scourge is in there just because of the +1/+1 synergy that we have. Voracious Hydra is another really solid card, mostly in there just to fight other creatures, but if you really want to double the amount of +1/+1 counters he'll enter with, that's also fine. And then as far as our land base, we're going to be running Castle Garenbrig, just to help ramp us a little bit faster to play our bigger creatures. We're going to be running Gingerbread Cabin because we're playing lots of forests, so most of the time this will generate us a food token, on top of which it is still a forest, just in case we want to use it with Nissa. Bonder's Enclave is just another card that just lets us draw a card in land form, so we'll always have it, and when we draw, obviously, we get more tokens. Cryptic Caves is also just another land that helps us draw cards. Unfortunately, with Cryptic Caves, you have to have 5 or more lands and sacrifice it, but it's still drawing a card in the late game just to get another token. Karn's Bastion's in there just because we have a little bit of +1/+1 synergy in the deck for Proliferate, and we do have Nissa, and you could probably utilize some other Planeswalkers if you really want to, so it's just a very solid card overall. And then Labyrinth of Skalfos is in there just to help out with our attacks or our blocks. So that's kind of just the rundown of the basic deck. You could build it in a couple of different ways and utilize a whole bunch of different cards because green is a very strong color currently, given the way things are in Standard, and there's a whole bunch of different things you could do. Green has always just been a very solid color in Commander because it helps ramp, it helps fix, it has some of the bigger creatures, and what Jolrael really does with the deck is she's just a very high synergy deck where you go wide, go big, and hit hard. And because she's focused about drawing cards, you're always going to try to have as healthy of a hand as you possibly can. Sometimes you do run a little bit low, but that's just the nature of the game where you just don't really see a whole bunch of your draw cards. But you're still playing some good basic green stuff just to kind of help the back end of the deck when the synergy isn't there. That's kind of the basic rundown of this deck profile. There's a lot of different ways you could build the deck. I'm not going to go over all of the cards because that's a lot of cards that you could utilize and a lot of different strategies just to draw cards. But this is just what I currently have based on what I could build. And yeah, that's kind of just it. So yeah, that's just kind of the deck in a nutshell. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you have any questions or thoughts about the deck, or if you want to see me even bother continuing to do Magic the Gathering content, because I'm still not entirely sure on what I want to do with my channel. But I figured I'd start testing the waters with a game I'm a little bit more familiar with, but obviously this is just a test, so that's just kind of it for this deck profile. I might have some gameplay of it later, just to kind of show you how the basic gist of it works. I do tend to stream Magic the Gathering over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zenitsu if you want to catch out any of my Magic streams there. But if you like Magic the Gathering content, make sure to leave a thumbs up so that I know. And if you feel like you want to subscribe, go right ahead. And with all that being said, I will see you in the next video.